श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः हरि ओम ओम सुखं नित्यं स्वप्रकाशं व्यापकं नाम रूपयोः अधिष्ठानं बुद्धिबोध्यं बुद्धेर्दृग्यत्तु निर्मलम् अपारं सर्ववेदान्त वेद्यं प्रत्यक्परं महः तदेवाहं न मत्तोऽन्यत् इति मे निश्चिता मतिः. So we were seeing the subject consciousness, the means consciousness, the object consciousness, and the knowledge consciousness. There are 4 stages of consciousness, not stages. In all these stages, the consciousness exists. That is the common thing. Whether it is the knower, the knowing, the object, or the knowledge, all the places the consciousness exists. There is nothing that gets existence, that is without consciousness. That is the idea. Okay. Now, after talking about the pramatru, pramana, prameya, etc., then now he brings in what is pramata, the knower. The definition for knower, as we said already, just by declaring something, we cannot say it exists. To show that it exists, we have to prove using definition and means of right knowledge. You have to define what it is and you have to use the means of right knowledge, pramana, to establish it. Okay, now we said pramata, knower. What is the knower? Who is the knower? So to establish that, he says pramatru lakshanam 214. Now here there are different schools of thought which accepts the knower to be a little different. So there are 2 schools of thought which we are taking here. Actually, no, when we see 3 schools of thought. One is Avachedavada, which we have already seen. One is Avachedavada, the other is Bimba Pratibimba, the third is Abhasavada. Avachedavada means limiting adjunct. Explanation using limiting adjunct. Bimba Pratibimba means reflected and reflection. Abhasavada means seeming reflection. So here he is taking only the 2 topics. One is Avachedavada, the limiting adjunct. The other is Abhasavada, which is a seeming reflection, not the reflected reflection. Why? Because that is not important. The Abhasavada and reflected reflection Vada, both these schools are similar. The only difference between Bimba Pratibimba and Abhasa, reflected reflection and seeming reflection, is in the reflected reflection, both reflected and reflection are accepted as real. Whereas in the Abhasavada, the seeming reflection is seeming reflection. It is not accepted as real. That is the difference. Okay. Avachedavada ritya pramatru sakshinoho swarupam visheshanakshanam upadhilakshanam cha. Okay. Now he says, according to the Avachedavada, according to the philosophy of the school of limiting adjunct, we are going to establish the definition for the knower and the witness, the self. Knower and the witness. Pramata and Sakshi. Okay. Now, by the way, while explaining that, we are also going to explain the definition for Visheshana and Upadhi. Visheshana. Visheshana means adjective. Upadhi means embodiment. Visheshana, adjective, Upadhi, embodiment. This is a very, very important knowledge to have to understand the Tattvamasi. If we want to understand Tattvamasi, that you are, the statement, you have to understand this. Because Tattvamasi means Tat, Ishvara, God, Tvam, you, limiting the Jiva, the limited Jiva, are Asi, one. You are God. That is the simple translation. Oh, if you are God, then that all the stupidities come as question. Without understanding what Tat and Tvam is. So there are two things here. Visheshana, if you use it as Visheshana, if you are accepting it as an adjective, then your questions are valuable, are right. But if you are going to accept it as limiting adjunct, embodiment, upadhi, there can be no such questions. So he is saying, okay, avachedavada ritya antakarana vishishtam chaitanyam pramata sacha karta bhokta cha. Okay. According to the avachedavada, according to the school of limiting adjunct, antakarana vishishta chaitanya pramata. Pramata, the knower is, who is the knower? Antakarana vishishta chaitanya, 3 words. Antakarana vishishta chaitanya. Chaitanya, consciousness. Vishishta means visheshana yukta, means having the adjective. And first word is antakarana, mind. Mind as the adjective, having the mind as the adjective for consciousness. Having the mind as the adjective for consciousness is I have to use the word adjective. Mind associated consciousness. This is how we explained earlier. Mind associated consciousness. If you understand it in such way, it is not a problem. It is not wrong. Mind associated consciousness is explained as a mind adjectified consciousness. Mind adjectified consciousness. That is the knower. Mind adjectified consciousness or mind associated consciousness is the knower. Who is the witness? Sakshi. And this knower, what is the specialty of this knower? He is not just the knower, he is also the doer and experiencer. He is also karta and bhokta. Karta, doer; bhokta, experiencer. He is also the doer and experiencer. When we say I am the doer, I am the experiencer, we are talking about the mind associated consciousness. The consciousness is neither doer nor experiencer. So mind associated consciousness is the knower. Okay, now what is the Sakshi witness? He says antakarana upahita chaitanyam. Antakarana vishishta chaitanyam. Antakarana upahita chaitanyam. The difference between the pramata, knower, and Sakshi, witness, is in the middle word, middle term, which is vishishta and upahita. Vishishta means visheshana yukta, associated with adjective. Upahita means upadhi yukta, associated with embodiment. So we can simply say the knower is a mind associated consciousness and Sakshi, witness, is a mind embodied consciousness. Mind associated consciousness is a knower. Mind embodied consciousness is a witness, Sakshi. Okay. Evam eva antakaranam pramatur visheshanattvena sakshina upadhitvena cha bhavati. So this mind as the adjective becomes the knower. This mind as the embodiment becomes the Sakshi. Simple. Okay. So visheshana lakshanam. Visheshana lakshanam. Vastu surupe yasya pravesho asti tadrisham vyavartakam vastu visheshana. What is visheshana? What is adjective? When you say adjective, what is adjective? What it means when you say something is adjective? So the definition for adjective is said here. Vastu surupe yasya pravesho asti. When you use something as adjective, it is associated with the effect, whichever it is adjectified to. First rule is it is associated with the effect or the object to which it is adjective. Second, it is also that which differentiates it from the others. One, it differentiates from the other. Two, it is associated with the effect or the object. So the definition is a karya anvayitve sati vyavartakatve sati vidyamanatvam visheshanasya lakshanam. This is the definition which the logicians use. What do they say? This is the definition which we also accept. Karya anvayitve sati. Karya anvayite. Karya means effect. Anvayitva means associated, existing in it. Okay. Vyavartakatve sati. At the same time, being a differentiator. It differentiates itself from the other. Third, vidyamanatam. It is existent. Okay, now I say red pot. Red is adjective, pot is adjectified. Okay, where does red exist here in the pot? Everywhere. It is in inseparable relationship with the pot. I cannot split the red and the pot. So, karya anvayitva, that is what is called as karya anvayitva, existing in the karya, intertwined in the effect, the object. Okay, first clause, it should be intertwined in the cause, the effect. Okay, first clause is red is intertwined, accepted, done. Second clause, vyavartakatve sati, it differentiate. When I say red, it differentiates, this red adjective differentiates this from, not the pot, from the blue pot, from the yellow pot, white pot. Vidyamanatam, it has to have existence. I cannot say something as adjective which does not exist. So, the adjective should exist. The adjective differentiates itself from the other. The adjective also completely pervades the object. Three clauses. That is what adjective is. Okay. Padartha antrebhyo vivichya vastu surupa avedakam yadu tadu vyavartakam ityuchate. What does vyavartaka? He is explaining. From the other objects, that which differentiates itself is vyavartaka. The second clause. Okay. Itrebhyo bhinnata yad buddhyate tad vyavartyam ityuchate. And vyavartaka, vyavartya, two words he is explaining. Vyavartaka means that which differentiates is vyavartaka. That which is differentiated is vyavartya. The pot is differentiated, that is vyavartya. The red is differentiator, that is vyavartaka. Vyavartaka means differentiator. Vyavartya means differentiated. That is the difference. Vyavartaka, differentiator. Vyavartya, differentiated. Okay. So he is giving you an example. Nilo ghata ityatra. Ghatasya nila varnam visheshanam. Blue pot. Blue pot. In this, be careful. Blue pot. Neelaha ghataha. Neelaha is, if you say it in English, you will not be able to understand the difference. Why I said be careful. If you understand in Sanskrit, you will understand the complication. Neelaha is a first case singular, subjective singular. Ghataha is also subjective singular. Neela is a first case singular. Ghataha is a first case singular. That means which is adjective, which is adjectified. Always adjective and adjectified will be in the same declension in Sanskrit. Neelasya ghatasya, neelena ghatena, like that they will be in same declension. Now, which is adjective, which is adjectified? Is the pot adjective or the blue adjective? Depends what you are differentiating it from. If you want to differentiate the other parts from this pot, then blue is the adjective. If you want to differentiate the other colors from this color, then pot is the adjective. It both can be adjective. This is why I keep repeating. This Sanskrit language is not the eligible, suitable language for all your AI experiments. They say, oh, Sanskrit, Sanskrit. It is a beautifully written language. The 8 chapters of Sanskrit sutras, aphorisms, 8 chapters, they are in. After studying the software, when I went and studied this Sanskrit, we call it OOPS. That's gone actually, it's old method. Object-oriented programming, we call it. Exactly, everything is like an object. You want, you call a function, it comes. Beautifully written sutras. But the problem is not in the sutras. The problem is not in the language. The problem is in the usage of language. What do you understand with this word? A simple word. It can either be this or that or something else. Now, how will I understand? Oh, usage. Usage also cannot determine what I want to understand it here as. Like a simple word, Atma. What does Atma mean? I'm not asking you ignorance. I'm asking you Atma. So for the first time, I'm asking you Atma. Answer. What does Atma mean? Atma. Self. Simple, direct meaning. Or that is where.
This is where I don't
Atma is a general word which can be used for anything. Mama Atma Devadatta. When I say Mama Atma Devadatta, Devadatta, this person is my life, myself. Treat him as myself. And sometimes your cell phone will be Mama Atma. Your slippers, if it is a costly slippers, myself resides in that. So it can be anything. The word Atma is a common word which can mean anything in different situations. How will you understand what is the meaning in this situation, in this context? Very difficult. So now here, coming to the point, Neelaha Gataha, which is the adjective, which is the adjectified. So what do you want to differentiate it from is the point. Now I want to differentiate the pot. So the differentiator is the color. Blue is the adjective and pot is the adjectified. Now, Yato Neelavarnam Neelaghata Swarupe Pravishtam Sat. So, let us suppose this is blue. Neelo Gataha, blue pot, or we'll take it as red pot, Rakto Gataha. Rakta, red is a Neelaghata Swarupe. In the pot, Pravishtam. It is a pervading, it has existence. Pravishta means not entering, it has existence in the pot. Redness is pervading, it is existing in the pot. First clause. So the first clause is a tick. Rakta Pita Shvetadi Varna Vishishta Gatebhyo Vyavartya. The second clause. When I say red pot, this red differentiates itself from the blue pot, green pot, etc. And Pruthak Imam Neelam Gatam Bodhiti. It gives me the knowledge of this distinctive red pot by differentiating it from the other pots. Now, Tasmat Neela Varnam Yavartakam Visheshnancha. Therefore, this Neela, this blue color, is a differentiator as well as a adjective. Okay. Gatastu Parichedya. And the pot is the differentiated. Blue is a differentiator and the pot is a differentiated. Yatah pītādi varna vishishta ghatādibhyah vivichya ayam nīlaghato udyate. Because it gets differentiated from the blue pot, etc., and specifically gives you the knowledge of red pot here in this situation, or blue pot. Yastu vichya buddhyate padartah sahi parichedhyah vyavartyah visheshyah iti chochyate. Now, he is giving the synonyms for the same word. That which is differentiated from others and understood, that is called as parichedya, vyavartya, visheshya. Means adjectified, differentiated, or limited. Limited, differentiated, or adjectified. Pot. Okay. Dandi purusha ityadav dandadikam purushasya visheshanam. When you say Dandi Purusha, a Kundali Purusha, a person with a earring or a person with a stick. When you say that, for that person with a stick, that stick is an adjective for the person. It differentiates himself from the others. When you say earring, the person with earring, Kundala means the earring. So it differentiates him from the others. Another example, that's all. Itham pramatuh antakarna visheshanam bhavati tasya pramatu surupe pravesha. In this way, for the knower, the mind is the adjective. Why? Because it is existent in the definition of the knower. Okay. Tatha prameya chaitanya vyavartya pramatu surupasya bodhakat antakaram vyavartakam. Chabhavati. So, mind exists in the, okay, for adjective, it should be existent, it should differentiate, and it should be, what is the third clause? Which is the first one? Should be existing. Karya anvayitve sati vyavartakatve sati vidyamanattam. That is the definition. It should exist in the object. It should differentiate as well as it has to have existence individually. So that existence is what we are talking about in the first place. So only two clauses we'll see. One is it should be existent in the effect. Second is it should differentiate. Now, the mind is accepted as a adjective for knower. So, mind should exist in the knower. Yes, it exists. Antakarana Vishishta Chaitanyam. We said that. So, with the consciousness, it is associated. Therefore, first clause is okay. It is existent. Second clause, it should differentiate. Yes. What does it differentiate from? When I say mind associated consciousness, what does it differentiate from? Mind associated consciousness is a individual self, knower. What does it differentiate from? Others? Who? No. Jiva is knower. So, remember, knower means object knowledge. Knower, knowing, object knowledge. So, when I say knower, it differentiates itself from the knowing knowledge, object of knowledge of object or knowledge object, the knowledge also. It differentiates itself. When I say pramata, knower, it differentiates itself from the pramana, the means of right knowledge, prameya, the object of knowledge, and prama, the knowledge itself. Okay? So, Upadhi Lakshanam. Now we are talking about the Upadhi. The embodiment. What is embodiment? Yastu vastu swarupe antarena eva pravesham vyavartako bhavati. So upadhi uच्यते. The first or the only difference between Visheshana, adjective, upadhi, limiting adjunct, embodiment is this. The adjective exists in the object. The embodiment does not pervade or exist in the object. That is the only difference between adjective and embodiment. Adjective exists in the object. Embodiment does not exist in the object, whatever it is associated with. Let me explain. Red pot. Is red embodiment or adjective? Red is an adjective because it exists in the object. It is associated with the object. Okay. Now, I'm having the same pot as an example. Now, I want to show this as an embodiment. Pot space. Pot space. The space inside the pot is embodied by the pot. The pot is nowhere associated with the space. It is just a embodiment. It is not existent in the effect or object, the space to which it is becoming the embodiment. So he says, Yastu vastu swarupe antreneva pravesham vyavartako bhavati. Without entering the object, without pervading the object, that which differentiates itself from the rest is called as a embodiment upadhi. That which by entering the object, associating itself with the object, differentiates itself from the others is called as a Visheshana, adjective. Entering or pervading, it is a adjective. Non-pervading, still differentiator, it is called as embodiment. Pervading and differentiator, adjective. Non-pervading and still differentiator is a upadhi. Pervading differentiator, adjective. Non-pervading differentiator, upadhi. Pervading differentiator, Visheshana. Non-pervading differentiator, upadhi. Okay. So he is giving the example. Karya ananvayitve sati vyavartakatve sati vidyamanatvam upadhitva lakshanam. If you take the definition for the adjective, he said karya anvayitve sati, and here karya ananvayitve sati. Go to the topic Visheshana Lakshana, the previous paragraph. In the previous paragraph, the second line, it says karya anvayitve sati vyavartakatve sati vidyamanatvam. The second line. Okay. Now here in the upadhi, the second line, karya ananvayitve sati vyavartakatve sati vidyamanatvam. There is Visheshana Lakshana. The second line says karya anvayitve sati vyavartakatve sati vidyamanatvam. Here it says karya ananvayitve sati vyavartakatve sati vidyamanatvam. Vidyamanatvam exists in both. Vyavartakatvam exists in both. The only difference is karya anvayitvam, karya ananvayitvam. Pervading the object, not pervading the object. That is the only difference between adjective and limiting adjunct, embodiment. Okay. Now, Nayyayika mate karna shashkuli avachannam navaha shrotram iti uchyate. So, instead of giving the pot space example, he is bringing the logicians. Logicians accept the sense organ of hearing, shrotram, they define the sense organ of hearing as a karna shashkuli avachinnam nabaha. Means karna shashkuli means the ear lobe. Avachinna means limiting. Nabaha means space. The space limited by the ear lobe, the external ear. That is called as ear. This they call as golaka. This external formation they call it as golaka. Okay. Inside whatever space exists, that they call as a shrotra, the sense organ of hearing. Okay. Tatra karna golakam shrotasya upadhi bhavati. This earlobe, it is a embodiment. It is not the sense organ of hearing. This is embodiment. And karna golakam shotriyendya surupe pravesha mantrenaiva. Why it is called as embodiment? Because without entering the space, without pervading the space, without being associated with that space directly, it is a being part of the shrotriyendriya, the sense organ of hearing. Without pervading the space, it is a being part of. Without, see, there are two parts. One is the earlobe and the inside space. Without the earlobe, the inside space cannot work. Without the inside space, the earlobe is not a, it's just an ornament. Useless ornament, that's all. So, tasmad karna golakam vyavarkam bhavati. Therefore, this earlobe becomes a differentiator. It differentiates itself from the nose, because the nose also has space inside. But can you hear anything? No. So the space should be embodied by this earlobe. So earlobe is also important, and the space inside is also important. Then he leaves that. He is bringing a common example which we can understand. Ghatakashah prastha parimita annasya avakasham dadati ityatra ghata akashasya upadhireva. Ghata akashasya upadhireva. So the pot gives space for a handful of food. When we say pot gives space for a handful of food, the pot is embodiment. And because the pot is not that which gives the space for food. It is space, because what does that mean? Pot is earthly. Earth, the element earth, does not have the capability to give space to anything. To give space is the quality of the akasha, the ether. So he says the pot space or the pot ether gives space for handful of food. Pot ether, let us keep it like that, because pot space gives space for, that's confusing. Pot ether gives space for handful of food. This handful of food is not in the pot. It is in the space. So, ghatasya prithvi karyatve avakasha pradatva sambhavat akasha swarupe pravesho naichyate. So, the pot is made of earthly element. Therefore, it cannot give any space to anything. Therefore, it cannot enter the area of ether, which gives space. Okay? Tasmat ghata akashasya upadhi. Therefore, the pot is an embodiment for the ether, the space inside. When we say pot space, pot is limiting adjunct or embodiment for the space. Pot is not an adjective for space. Okay. Evam eva, this we saw during a Drugdrishya Veka. I put it on a table. I explained a mathematical equation with tat and tvam. Tat means why we have to understand this adjective and embodiment. Tat means that. That means Ishvara. Who is Ishvara? Maya avachinna Chaitanya. And Tvam is Jiva. Jiva is avidya avachinna Chaitanya. Maya associated Chaitanya, Asi is equal. Equal to avidya, ignorance associated consciousness. Maya associated consciousness is equal to avidya associated consciousness. When you have a formula like this, when you have an equation like this, what you do is in both sides, what is common? Associated consciousness is common. You cancel that. What do you establish? Maya equal to avidya. That is not what this statement is for. Tattvamasi is not to establish Maya and avidya are equal. If you accept it as embodiment, this is what will happen. So, if you accept it as adjective, this is what will happen. Therefore, we say embodiment. If you say it as embodiment, when you are going to bring this equation, you are not going to cancel the Maya and associated consciousness, because associated consciousness has no link with the Maya or avidya. So he says, Evam antakarana upadhi upita chaitanyam sakshi ityatra sakshino antakarana upadhi. When we say antakarana, mind, embodied consciousness. Mind, embodied consciousness. Here, for the consciousness, mind is the embodiment. Mind associated consciousness. If I am going to say, mind is an adjective for consciousness. When I say mind embodied consciousness, it is not adjective. Embodiment is different. You cannot cancel in the previous way. Okay. Nahi antakarana se sakshi rupe pravesho asti. Why do you call it as embodiment? Why cannot it be an adjective? Because the mind is not any which way associated or pervading the consciousness. Consciousness pervades everything, but it is not associated with anything. That is another thing. Consciousness, though pervades anything, everything, it is not associated with anything. And mind has no possibility of pervading or associating with consciousness. Therefore, mind can be only embodiment. Like space pervades everything. Inside, outside, there is space. Inside and outside of pot, there is space. So when I move this pot, the space inside is also moving. That is what we say. Is it real? When I move the pot space also is moving. This is like the childhood game which we used to play. We used to stay here, watch the moon, run a little distant and see. Oh, the moon is also here. See here. That's the same game here. So he says, evam eva. Kintu antakaranam prameya chaitanya vivichya sakshinam bodhayati. This mind differentiates itself from the object consciousness. Object consciousness, prameya chaitanya means the consciousness which is the object of knowledge. The consciousness which is the object of knowledge. That is what we have to understand. From that consciousness, this embodiment differentiates itself. Differentiates the sakshi. Tasmad ekameva antakaranam sakshinaha upadhitvena pramatuhu visheshanatvena cha bodhyati. The same mind becomes a embodiment for something and adjective for something else. The same mind. If mind is embodiment, what it is? What is it called? If mind is embodiment, what is it called? Sakshi. If mind is adjective, knower. Okay, done. That is what he says. Antakarana ubhida chaitanyam sakshi, antakarana vishishta chaitanyam paramata. That is what is said in the next line. The mind as embodiment of consciousness is sakshi. The mind as adjective for consciousness is a knower. Okay. Upadhina yuktam upahitam, visheshanatvena yuktam vishishtam iti cha uchyate. So he is using a technical word upahita and vishishta. He is explaining that. Associate with an embodiment is upahita. Associated with the adjective is vishishta. Nothing serious. Tatra antakarana vishishta pramata eva karta bhokta sukhi dukhi samsari jivo bhavati. So this antakarana, the mind associated consciousness, the mind adjectified consciousness, the mind adjectified consciousness is not just the knower. He is the one who is experiencing happiness, sorrow, experiencer, doer. Simply put, he is the jiva, individual self. Mind adjectified consciousness is jiva. And mind embodied consciousness is a jiva sakshi. Sakshi. What sakshi? Jiva sakshi is sakshi for jiva, individual self. Mind embodied consciousness is a jiva sakshi. When you remove the mind and say maya adjectified consciousness, Ishvara. Maya embodied consciousness, Ishvara sakshi. Mind associated consciousness, jiva. Maya associated consciousness, Ishvara. Mind embodied consciousness, jiva sakshi. Maya embodied consciousness, Ishvara sakshi. Witness for jiva, witness for Ishvara. Okay. Itsam avachedavada ritya pramatradi lakshanam nirupitam. In the limiting adjunct, in the school, through the school of limiting adjunct, this is how we explain the knower, the definition for knower. Now, abhasavada ritya 215. Abhasavada ritya jiva sakshinoh swarupam. The same thing is explained. Who is jiva, knower, and who is sakshi, the witness. The same thing is explained. But here, instead of the school of limiting adjunct, we are using the school of seeming reflection. Abhasa. Abhasa means seeming reflection. The self is reflected upon the antakarana. Then that is a different thing. Seemingly reflected. We are not saying reflected because there is nothing other than self. That is the baseline. Okay? Now, abhasavade, abhasahita antakaranam jivasya visheshanam. Okay. Abhasa in the sense of this seeming reflection. This reflection. What is the reflection? He says, in the school of reflection, abhasahita antakaranam, the mind with the reflection of consciousness. So, the mind with the reflection of consciousness. Mind is also detached. The snake is lost, the mind is detached. What to do? Now, it's okay. Now, this whole thing is the self. This whole thing is self. This is antakarana. This self, does it get reflected in the antakarana mind? This is mind, and this whole thing is self. Of course, when I close the box, it is going to get reflected inside. Oh, there is no light. Don't say that, because self is self-effulgent. So there is light. Now, the mind is going to reflect this box, which is a self. So he says, abhasahita antakarana jivasya visheshanam. This reflection associated consciousness reflection associated consciousness, reflected associated, not consciousness, mind. Reflection associated mind is the adjective for jiva. In the first school, mind associated consciousness, mind adjectified consciousness. We'll refine it like this: mind adjectified consciousness. That is the first school. Mind adjectified consciousness. Here, it is not pure mind. Reflection associated mind adjectified consciousness. We are just adding one extra portion. Mind adjectified consciousness. Instead of saying mind adjectified consciousness, we are saying a reflection associated mind adjectified consciousness. Reflection associated mind. See, in the mind there is reflection of the self, right? In the mind there is reflection of the self. So this reflection associated mind is adjective for this consciousness. Reflection associated mind, it is not just simple mind, it is reflection associated mind. This reflection associated mind adjectified consciousness. This is jiva. Okay. Sakshina upadischa bhavati. That reflection associated mind, if it is adjective, it is a jiva. If it is embodied, it is a sakshi. Same thing. Adjective, knower. Embodiment, sakshi. Adjective, knower. Embodiment, witness. So, what is adjective, what is embodiment? That only there is difference. The previous school accepted mind as the adjective. This school says it is not just pure mind. It is a reflection associated mind. That is the difference. Now, अतः एव आवासयित अंतःकरण विशिष्ट चैतन्यं जीवः, आवासयित अंतःकरण उपहित चैतन्यं साक्षी. यद्यपि पक्षद्वये अपि विशेषण चैतन्यं जीवः एव संसारी च, तथापि विशेष्य भागे चैतन्ये जनन मरणादि संसारो न भवति. Okay. So in both schools, the first school said mind associated consciousness. The second school says reflection associated mind adjectified consciousness. Mind adjectified consciousness, reflect. So there is adjective portion, there is adjectified portion. In both, the adjectified portion does not change. Only the adjectives change. So what he says is, in the adjective portion, that is what is samsari, the jiva, etc. That is what is undergoing the circle of birth and death, not the adjectified consciousness. The consciousness, the adjectified portion is not undergoing the cycle of birth and death. Okay? Now, tasmat visheshana matre samsara parivasati sa eva vishnu chaitanya pratiyate. So therefore we can conclude only in the portion of adjective the cycle of birth and death, which is called as samsara, exists, not in the portion of adjectified. But I see myself. Myself means the one who is sentient, conscious, to be born and dead. That is superimposed. Pratiyate, it is seemingly existing. It is seen like that. It is understood so. How can I see something which does not exist? So for that, he is giving three different situations. क्वचित् विशेषणगत धर्माणां व्यवहारो विशिष्टो भवति, विशिष्टे भवति. क्वचित् विशेषगत धर्माणां व्यवहारो विशिष्टे भवति. क्वचित् विशेषण विशेष्य उभयगत धर्माणां व्यवहारो विशिष्टे भवति. So there are different situations. You may do transactions in different situations. There is adjective, there is adjectified. Sometimes what happens is the attributes of the adjective is seen in the adjectified. Sometimes the attributes of the adjective is seen in the adjectified. Sometimes the attribute of the adjectified is superimposed on the adjective. Sometimes the attributes of both is seen in the adjectified. There are all possibilities. Activities, the attributes of the adjective in the adjectified. Attribute of the adjectified in the adjective. Both in the adjectified. Don't understand. Okay, we know. Tad yatha. We are giving the example. Dandena घट आकाशो नश्यति इत्यत्र विशेषणीभूत घट एव दंडेन नश्यति न तो विशेषभूत आकाश. I say, where's my pot? So, if I use a stick, with the stick, I break the pot space. I say, with a stick, I destroy the pot space. With a stick, I destroy the pot space. The usage is right. That is how you say. I destroy the pot space with that stick. I killed him, you say. What did you kill? Did you kill the body or did you kill the self? You can never kill the self. You cannot kill the body. What did you kill then? So, similarly, or if you are talking about killing means stopping the heart, then you kill the body, not the self. But you say, I killed him. So, the idea is through the stick, you destroy the pot space. You say, there, the pot is destroyed by the stick, not the space. Pot, space. Pot is adjective. Space is adjectified. You destroy the adjective with the stick, not the adjectified. But still, you superimpose the attributes of the adjective, the destruction, in the adjectified. You destroy the adjective, but you superimpose it on the adjectified. You say, I destroyed the pot space. Now, second, Kundali Purusha Swapiti. Ityatra Visheshane Kundale Swapo na Anveti. Visheshye Purushe tu Swapaha Sambhavati. Just simple. A person with earring sleeps, or a person with earring goes. Here, earring is a adjective, person is a adjectified. Earring person goes, earring person sleeps. When I say this, the sleep or going is not for the earring, it is for the person. But where do I superimpose? I also superimpose on the earring. So that is the adjectified, the attribute of the adjectified, which is going or sleeping, is seen in the adjective. So the activity of the attribute of the adjective is seen in the adjectified. Sometimes the attributes of the adjectified is seen in the adjective. First case, pot space breaking. Second case, the earring person sleeps or goes. Third case, the attributes of both seen in the adjectified. आयुधपाणिः पुरुषः योद्धुं याति इत्यत्र विशेषणस्य आयुधस्य विशेषस्य पुरुषस्य युद्धाय गमनाद् उभयोः अपि धर्मः विशिष्टे व्यवह्रियते. With weapon, this person goes to a war. With weapon in hand, this person goes to a war. With weapon in hand is adjective, person is adjectified, going for war is the activity. Now, the person is not going alone. Therefore, you cannot say the attribute of the person is seen in the moving or sleeping is seen in the earring. So, second case scenario is not here. And the first case scenario, the pot is broken, not the space. Now, the Ayudapani, the person with weapon, the hand with weapon, it is not going alone. Hand with weapon, the person with weapon in hand is going. That is the idea. So, the person is also going with weapon in hand is also going. So, both the attributes are seen in whom? The Purusha. Going for a war. So, that is seen in the attributor. Attributed is the person. Attribute is a weapon in hand. So, weapon in hand also is going for war. He is not leaving the weapon hand and weapon outside. So, he is taking the weapon in hand and this person goes for a war. So, attributes of both is moving in the activity which is going for the war. So, that is seen in the Vishesha, the Purusha. Prakriti. Now, okay, it is possible. The attribute of adjective in the adjectified, the attribute of adjectified in the adjective, attribute of both in the adjectified. It's all possible. Okay, fine. What is the current situation? He says, Prakriti, in the current situation, to avachedavadehe antakaranam visheshanam abhasavadehe abhasayita antakaranam visheshanam. Dvayorapi pakshayoho chaitanya visheshanam. In the current situation, according to the first school, the mind is the adjective. According to the second school, reflection associated mind is the adjective. But in both schools, the common thing, the adjectified is a Chaitanya consciousness. Okay, this we understood. Understood this. Mind is adjective in the first school. Mind as okay. So the mind same, but the difference is the association. So reflection associated mind is the adjective in the second school. Okay, very good. Tasmin Chaitanya Janmadi Samsaro na sambhavati. In the consciousness, there is no birth and death. That is also understood. Kintu. In the consciousness, there is no birth and death. In the adjectified, there is no change. But Visheshanasya antakaranasya. The first example, the attributes of the adjective is superimposed on the attributor. The birth and death is for the jiva, mind or reflection associated mind, the adjective portion. That is superimposed on the adjectified consciousness. This way he says, Abhasayita antakaranasya va Visheshana antakaranasya va ka dharmabhuto yo janmadi rupaha samsaraha. So aveka avivekibihi bhrantya vishishta chaitanye vyavahriyate. The attribute of birth and death, which is the attribute of the adjective, either mind or the reflection associated mind, that is superimposed on the attributed, which is consciousness, which neither is born nor dies. So, vyavaharo nama pratiti kathanchana. So, vyavahara means transaction normally. Here, the perception or the explanation, that's all. The expression, that's all. Anaya ritya abhasavada avachedavadayoho vedo avagantavya. So, in this way, we have to understand the difference between the avachedavada, the school of association, and abhasavada, the school of reflection. Seeming reflection or reflection, that's what it matters. Now, which is better? See, in the earlier classes, Tattva Bodha, we taught from the standpoint of Avachedavada, We said avidya avachinna chaitanyam, maya avachinna chaitanyam. Avidya associated consciousness, maya associated consciousness. This is what we taught. Then we is the abhasavada a promotion or depromotion? We don't know which is better, abhasavada or avachedavada. Abhasavada seems very simple. Mind associated consciousness, avidya associated consciousness, maya associated consciousness, simple. Now instead of that, reflection associated mind, associated consciousness. So which is better? For simple understanding, avachedavada, the school of association is better, simple understanding. But superior is abhasavada. That is what we have been learning after. In the other lectures, we have been learning only avasavada, not avachedavada. Okay. For simple explanation, mind associated consciousness, avidya associated consciousness, I keep repeating. But the idea is the adjective has a reflection also. We have to understand that. Just remember that. That is the only thing which is the difference. Okay. Now, he says, what is the advantage of accepting the adjective, or what is the association, or what is the advantage of accepting this limiting adjunct? The second school, the seeming reflection, that is shown. We'll see this. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Okay. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Take the विदिताखिल शास्त्र सुधा जलधे महितोपनिषत् कथितार्थ निधे हृदये कलये विमलं चरणं भव शंकर देशिक मे शरणं करुणावरुणालय पालय मां भव सागर दुःख विदून हृदं रचयाखिल दर्शन तत्त्वविदं भव शंकर देशिक मे शरणं भवता जनता सुहिता भविता निज बोध विचारण चारुमते कलयेश्वर जीव विवेक विदं भव शंकर देशिक मे शरणं भव एव भवानीति मे नितरां समजायत चेतसि कौतुकिता मम वारय मोह महाजलधिं भव शंकर देशिक मे शरणं सुकृते धिकृते बहुधा भवतो भविता समदर्शन लालसता अतिदीनं इमं परिपालय मां भव शंकर देशिक मे शरणं जगतिमवितुं कलिता कृतयो विचरन्ति महामहासश्चलत अहिमां शूरिवात्र विभासि गुरो भव शंकर देशिक मे गुरु पुंगव केतन ते समतामयता नहि कोपि सुधि शरणागत वत्सल तत्वनिधे भव शंकर देशिक मे शरणं विदितानमया विशदैककलन च किंचन काञ्चनमस्ति गुरु द्रुतमेव विधेहि कृपां सहजां भव शंकर देशिक मे शरणं भव शंकर देशिक मे शरणम्